Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the word. And today that word is generational. Generational. Now, I remember using that word and I had to look back. I said, let me see where I used that before. And it was with Timothy when it was Paul was writing to Timothy talking about his mother and grandmother and how that beautiful family lineage of pointing him and pointing that whole family to God and more importantly to Jesus Christ. And so it was it was something special to see then. But now here as we come to Noah and in Genesis chapter 9, we're going to actually see kind of both sides of that coin, if you want to look at it, kind of a blessing and a curse. Those things that can be passed on from generation to generation. You know it. I know it. We learn good things and bad things from our parents and grandparents. We also pass on good things and bad things to our children and grandchildren. And even if you don't have kids, and even if your parents are no longer around, no longer living, or even if you just don't associate with parents or your children, here's the thing. The same is true for all of us that we pass on things to the next generation. Even within the church, the way that the church works with and works for God today, I believe directly correlates with what the next generation will learn and what they will do for the kingdom of God. Now, of course, there are always those that can come along and either stray off of those off the blessings that have been passed down, those that stray away from God, and there's also those that can have negative things, curses almost passed on from generation to generation, and then somebody breaks free and gets out of those things. Joseph is a kind of a good example of those, that he was one of those that breaks the generational things going on, and we'll see that later on in Genesis. But today, I want us to look at two parts. We actually look at a couple verses, and then we'll skip on down and look at a few more verses. The first part has to do with Noah when he gets off of the ark. And now God is making a covenant with him and his children, his family, and says, I will never again flood the earth, destroy everything on the earth by flood. We know that Revelation, there's a lot of things that's going to take place, but a flood is not what's going to happen to destroy all things. So, with that, he says, okay, I'm not only going to tell you that, but as a sign of that covenant promise, I'm going to place a rainbow in the sky. And so he goes on and through this, and he says, look, every time you see the rainbow, guess what? He didn't say every time you see the rainbow, you're going to think about pride and you're going to think about homosexuality and all the things that are out there now that the rainbow has come to mean. No, the meaning of the rainbow is a covenant between man and God, and really it's more from God than it is with man. It was just his reminder of the covenant that he made with us, that he made with Noah specifically. So he even goes on and says, every time I look at it, I will remember what I have promised you. And so it stands as a reminder for us too, that after, when the rainbow usually shows up is after the storm. And it's like during the storm, you're probably wondering, man, is this it? Is God going to destroy everything? And even no matter how long the storm lasts, and then when it dissipates and you see the rainbow, or sometimes even in the midst of a storm or in the midst of the rain, you see the rainbow. And is the reminder that this is not the end. But then we also you'll see a blessing from that. But then after that, you'll see that Noah, and this probably several years later, just for the fact that he plants a vineyard, and for him to actually have grapes that produce wine would have taken a couple years in itself. So there's some time in between these passages we're going to look at. And he drinks in excess, gets drunk, and then he is naked in his tent. Now, you have one son, Ham, that comes in and basically makes fun of, makes light of, points out his father's sin, and he points it out to his brothers, and his brothers do the righteous thing and cover their father's nakedness, and as a result, something is passed down there as well. Now, I kind of given all that as an introduction, kind of a little bit of a summary, but let's look at the verses and then we'll complete that thought about generational today. So Genesis 9, verses 12 through 13, and then we'll skip down to verses 24 through 27 today. And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth." And skipping on down to verse 24, Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. Then he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. He shall be to his brethren." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant, and may God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." You imagine what we talk about generational, what an encouragement this would have been for Moses' audience to hear, for the Israelites to hear, to be reminded of the fact that they were going into the promised land later on, right? That as they're going into the promised land, to the land of Canaan, to the Canaanites, that this would have stood as a reminder for them that these are a cursed people. These are a people that have followed in the footsteps of their grandfather, great grandfather, and on so on down the line. And these are the people that God has prophesied would be the servants of our people. And since the descendants of Abraham and the Israelites come from the other brother, then here we have that direct blessing and a direct curse that is handed down from generation to generation. Now, you think about that. One decision by Ham made all the difference. Think about even the decision on God's part to put a rainbow in the sky to be a reminder for all of us, a reminder of his blessings. But I wonder at the same time how many times, see, as Ham is the one that messed up, you notice that the curse went to Canaan, his son. It goes on to Noah's grandson. And see, this started too because of Noah's drunkenness. So even his own sin has affected his own family. It has separated his sons, and it has even separated his grandchildren from one another in just one decision. You look around, and I know in my life it has happened to me, and I know in your life I'm sure you can think of situations as well that you look back and you say, man, I can see where that one decision, that one mistake has altered or has changed the course of my life and all of those who would follow after me for generation after generation. It is something that we do not think about in the moment. Noah had no thought of the future generations when he was sitting back going to enjoy an excess of his wine. Ham probably didn't think anything about his children or his grandchildren or his great grandchildren when he was poking fun and exposing the shame of his father. At the same time, I'll be honest, I don't believe that Shem and Japheth probably had a lot of their children and grandchildren on their mind when they were doing the righteous thing. But what negative can come from doing the right thing? I know we often say no good deed goes unpunished, but we need to understand that that's not the way that God works. That the way that God works is God blesses those who bless him and bless his people. And that's what we find in Genesis especially. But he will curse those that come against Abraham, come against the Israelites. And he will, look, he's going to take care of all of those who will come against Christians as well. That's what we just talked about in Revelation. So today, I guess the focus should be this. Take a moment and pray. before every decision that you make. That's why we need to be prayed up. That's why we need to be in the Word, because at any moment, any decision we make could affect generation after generations. And I don't know about you, but I pray that they would get to experience blessing because of decisions I've made rather than curses. God bless you. And I pray you have a great, great day.